Yeah, so thank you everyone. So we'll have a little dialogue, a little discussion. I have prepared a couple of questions, actually like one question for each of you. So before that, just like to say that I think this has been a great day, and thank you so much for all the interesting talks. I think it's obvious that open source is important for the gaming industry, for metaverse, especially to ensure that innovation is accessible to all. I think that's one of the key reasons. And as I said, just to tie the day together, I prepared a couple of questions. And the first question is for David. So David Smith from Croquet. Maybe we should actually, I was thinking maybe for the record, maybe we should make a quick introduction. So before I start asking questions, I'll let everyone introduce themselves quickly.
Hi, I'm Felipe Arias from Igalia, and I'm working on the Wallbeak browser for virtual reality devices.
I'm Qingli Wang, come from Cogos. I'm in charge of XR technology and the team management.
And I'm Bing from Qualcomm and take care of the China XR business and most focus on OEM and ODM related things. Thanks to join this meeting.
My name is Dennis, and I'm in charge of Cronus Group China business.
So I'm Nathan from ARM. I'm taking care of ecosystem development and developer relations, particularly in China. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Alice Cecile. I'm one of the maintainers of Bevy, an open source Rust game engine.
David Smith, CTO, founder of Croquet Corporation. Very glad to be here.
Yeah, and thank you so much, all of you, for supporting this conference today. So David, as I said, your talk about the augmented conversation, it's truly inspiring. I think everyone agrees. And how do you believe that the integration of spatial computing and live simulations will impact the way we collaborate and innovate in areas such as education, business, or research? And what challenges do you see will come up in order to achieve this kind of seamless communication, idea sharing, and so on?
Yeah, Tim Cook said about AR, VR, that it was going to permeate your life. And I think my opinion is he's exactly right. Today, you have a phone in your pocket, and that phone isn't a phone. It's an information access device. Everywhere you go, you have access to information, you have access to people. This new device that we're about to maybe get good enough, I mean, I think the Vision Pro is it's setting a high bar. Alan once mentioned about the original Macintosh, it was the first computer good enough to criticize. And I think maybe this one will be as well. And as soon as we get to that bar, that's going to unleash some magical things. In particular, everybody else is going to be very scared and competition is going to happen. That means that these devices are going to get not just good, but great in a relatively short time because there's going to be a lot of fear and greed around that. But when you think about these next generation devices, they're wearable, you're going to wear them all day long. Think about when you wake up in the morning, you put your glasses on, you're augmenting your vision, right? This thing that's coming is going to be as important to you as putting your glasses on. In a sense, what happens is when you look at this world around us, there's a huge amount of visual information in the real world, but there's even more visual information available to us in the virtual world. And today, we think of them as disjoint somehow, but the reality is the physical reality and the virtual reality are going to merge and be just reality. There won't be any big difference between them. And just sort of put a key element in this, I mean, once you can do that, once you can create these worlds, it's essential that you be able to share them. There's a really key idea. The fact of your phone, take your phone out, virtually every other phone on the planet can be accessed through your phone. You dial the right number, you can call somebody. This new device is going to replace your phone. It's going to replace your PC. It's going to replace your television. It's going to replace IMAX, everything. And yet, the worst thing that could happen is it becomes a walled garden environment that I can only talk to people who have the same kind of device that I have. It's like I have an iPhone, but it can only call other iPhones. That's stupid. It's not going to happen. So when I think about these next generation devices, they are not just a communication platform. The most important communication platform that's ever existed. It's going to transform the way we think, the way we communicate. And then I think this is what's so particularly exciting. And one last thing is AI is going to be an intimate part of this. When you think about a conversation I'm having with you and having an AI assistant that generates a shared simulation that all of us can engage with as part of this conversation, not only is that going to happen, it has to happen. It's essential that we have that richness in our world, in our ability to collaborate and communicate.
Thank you. And if anyone here has if you have any comments on other answers here, please feel free to let me know, and I'll pass you the microphone. So, Dennis. So, as I mentioned before, thank you so much for everything that Kronos Group is doing to support the industry. So question for you is, how do you see that open standards contribute to fostering innovation and competition within industries that are heavily reliant on interoperability? And what are some examples of open standards that have significantly benefited both users and developers?
That's a very good question, and it's not very easy to answer. I will try. Open standards, on one hand, will definitely get ecosystem built up quicker because it is open. Any companies can contribute to it and can bring their own stuff into the standard. And on the other hand, if in the very early stage, some small companies, innovative companies, they would like to have their own standards, their own specifications that will greatly encourage innovation. Because once you have the open standards, the speed of forming the standards will be much slower. If the standard is owned by a single company, it can move very fast. It doesn't have to consider other people, other company, other IP things. They don't have to. But as an open standard, you have to take care of everyone. And anyone can raise their hand and go against it. And it's because it's a consensus-based, so it will slow down the process. So in the early phase of technology development, probably open standards is not a very good thing. Once the technology gets mature, the industry should have a consensus on something easier.
Thank you. I think that is exactly what you talked about, David, as well, that you need to have open standards in order to, or standards in some way, in order to make like connection between everyone. So
obviously, phones are built based on open standards. The phones, the internet, all these things are open standards that are absolutely transformative. But you're exactly right that once a standard is a standard, it's very, very difficult to modify it. It's like everybody's dependent upon it. A modification, it breaks. So, so standardization. I remember Randy Walser once said, "I think standards are great. We should have many of them." But in a sense, that's kind of where we go. Is that you can't modify a standard. You usually replace it. Yeah. And so that's usually done by some group who does a great job of creating something that makes sense then to move into that standard. That's the right way to do it.
Let me just add one more thing. And I'm a big advocate for open standards. And the one advantage that everybody probably already recognized is that once there's a company, for example, they give up, other companies can carry the flags and keep going on. So the industry wouldn't have a bigger loss because of single company drop out. I gave an example of Nokia in the handset market, device market. If all the standards are owned by Nokia, once they dropped out, then people stuck.
Yeah.
OpenGL was the same.
Well, Macromedia Flash. Similarly, like the death of it's Adobe killing Macromedia Flash killed an entire ecosystem of games, and like had this been an open standard, had this been something shared, it could have had a second life, and there could have been eventually solutions to all of the problems that it did have that caused its death.
Good comments. So something that's based on open standards as well, but also is open source, is the Wolvik WebXR browser. So I would like to ask Felipe here about, we know that, we talked about that one thing that makes Wolvik so unique is that it is currently the only available multi-platform open source WebXR browser. So in your view, Felipe, what are the main reasons that the industry and the users really needs Wolvik?
Well, I think what users and when the industry needs are common standards, common ways to communicate and to share experiences across different devices and across different platforms. So the web platform provides a series of standards in the form of WebXR that developers can use to create these experiences, but then you need way to experience them in different devices. And what we are aiming to achieve with Wolvik is to provide a common tool that is open source, that runs in as many virtual reality devices as we can, so people can access this common wealth of content that creators have made for them. And by doing this, we hope that in the future we can have a larger community of creators making things, sharing them, and evolving together.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. We talked about that as well, that Wolvik goes on any product, basically. You're doing a fantastic job on achieving that, and maybe today the market with the VR headsets is, as we know, is dominated by Quest, and they have their own browser. So if you're a content developer, of course it works for the Quest on the Quest browser. But if you optimize or really make sure that it works really well on Wolvik, you will know that it works on Pico, on Huawei, on the HTC, on the Quest, and so on. So I think that's to me is like the number one reason that we need something, except that the Wolvik browser is an amazing browser in itself with features and privacy features and all that. That's probably better than other browsers, but just these cross-platform, hardware agnostic capabilities are really important.
And I think the web platform is really attractive for sharing a wide variety of content that you want to be able to reach as many people as possible. So the educational use case, for example, is a good example where you want to be able to use existing platforms that are already there, and you want as many people as possible to access your content.
Yeah, less friction. So, game engines. We have two experts. So actually, I have a same question for both of you, but Alice first. So,
All right.
So my question is, how can open source game engines contribute to the democratization of game development and the creation of diverse gaming experiences?
So, to me, one of the biggest ways that they can do this is actually about teaching people and making the knowledge fully accessible to everyone across the world. Because for years and years and years, for decades, game development has often been treated as an arcane art and full of closely guarded dark secrets that, especially in things like networking and things like rendering and in things like high performance code, that has been really inaccessible to people who haven't entered the industry, whether they're hobbyists, whether they're beginners, whether they're new companies entering the market, whether they're developers from an emerging market. And this has led to a reinvention of the wheel. It has slowed down people's ability to make incredible things and to learn the skills and tools and develop the standards that we need in order to make better games faster without always constantly redoing the same thing. And if your game engine is open source, if your libraries are open source, if you design them in a way that they can be reused, you can go make your next 2D roguelike Metrovania in a quarter of the time, and if you can make your next 2D roguelike Metrovania in a quarter of the time, okay, sure, that's great for business. But what I'm really excited about is the way that it opens up the door to much smaller teams and much more impressive hobbyist projects.
Yeah, great answer. So, Wan Xingling, do you agree with that?
Well. As we know, Cocos was a successful open source engine. It led to an explosion of mobile game development at the beginning period of the smartphone. I think in addition of its own advantages, the open source is the most important reason too, because open source allows more people to involve in game development. To developers with the open source, the source code, they can understand the Cocos engine better, and they can learning and debugging their project with full source code. Secondly, because they have the full code, so they can modify or customize the engine to their specific needs, and the flexibility allows them to create the games better fit to their ideas, and leading the diverse experiences. For Cocos, we build the trust with the developers. Because, for example, there are about 100 study books written by the developers spontaneously, and in five languages. Yeah. So for the ecosystem of developers, they can provide more valuable resources such as tutorials, plugins and some video lessons. It's very useful to the newcomer. And Cogos has many community contributors. About more than 600 developers contribute code to the Cogos repository. And if someone who are interested in developing games, Metaverse or XR, they can start the project or join the community anytime. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. So, yeah, so Qualcomm is focusing a lot on creating an open ecosystem.
Yeah.
I know
Not open source, just
not open
XR.
source, but it's open ecosystem. So kind of similar thoughts about the Qualcomm's XR business with the Snapdragon spaces and so on. And I think it was a great talk you had earlier this afternoon. And you're focusing as well on the open source in terms of or open standards.
Yeah.
You do with the Kronos OpenXR, like great implementation of that. So do you think you can give some examples or use cases where spaces, Snapdragon spaces, support of OpenXR is already making an impact for developers?
Yeah. Thank you, Daniel. I think I can share two parts about spaces, and just as the slides I showed, and because our spaces SDK already supported OpenXR, and based on Unity AI Foundation and the UE blueprint. So such kind of developers which are very familiar on the mobile phone sites, they can very easily port their games and apps from mobile phone to the XR devices. And they, just for example, maybe they only need to take 5 or 7 days to port one game from mobile phone to the XR device. And another part is that we are thinking and discussing with the developers, do we really need to put all these AR features into one app? Maybe we can just pick up one feature. We call AR as a feature. Like, you don't need to change all the apps, just add one AR feature. And another problem is that maybe the end user, if you think about from the end user perspective, they are not very familiar with the XR experience. They still need to put a lot of efforts to learn how to use hand tracking, how to use 6-DoF controller, something like that. So maybe we can just provide one feature which they can still use interaction on the phone side. They can use a touch screen. They can touch the screen and use a zoom in, zoom out to do some interaction with the virtual content. So that's why we make a feature named Spaces Fusion. And this feature can be enabled on the mobile phone and pairing with the AR viewer, which means that you can still you can still see the contents on the mobile phone, and at the same time you can see the 3D content at the viewer side. But the most important thing is that you can still keep using the phone to be the controller, use a touch screen. You don't need to use a hand tracking or something like that. It's very easy to the end user to know how to do the AR experience, something like that. So this is very important.
So that could be like a transition for users that haven't experienced AR before.
Yeah. This is really important to like make XR to touch many people as much as possible. Yeah.
Great. Any comments on that from anyone? No? So, Nathan, it's definitely impressive to see ARM's substantial contributions to Vulkan and the open source tools and game engines that developers rely on. So my question is, thinking about this, if you could give some examples of some tools and game engines that have benefited from ARM's involvement and how these contributions have enhanced the Vulkan ecosystem for both developers and end users. So sorry about the long question.
Okay, thank you, Daniel. That's a big question. I talked a lot about the useful libraries, tools, and sample code made by ARM to support Vulkan developers in my speech today, as well as example like our partnership with Cocos. Beyond that, we actually have direct engagement with many top gaming engines. Maybe I cannot mention the exact engine name because I didn't get enough time to get a PR approval beforehand.
I understand.
But if you are a game developer, you surely have the answer about which the most powerful game engine might be today. So in this case, we have a bi-weekly sync up with the core engineering team behind that engine. We review their roadmap regularly. We provide technical advice to them. And sometimes we also submit code patches when necessary to fix potential performance or quality issues relevant to our IP. And most importantly, we are learning. We are learning from these engines to fine-tune our driver software stacks and to make sure that our future IP design can really meet the real requests from developers as well as end users. So if you get a chance to search ARM on GitHub, you will get a long list of open source repositories maintained by our engineers. But there are also many other beautiful things we are working on. Might be extremely important for handling the computing intensive workloads on mobile device, but not necessarily to be API specific. For example, we have been investing a lot into the compiler optimization for Halide, which is a domain-specific language extension of C++. As the return, we see roughly more than 20% performance uplift after it, and also a better backward compatibility with devices existing in the market. So after all, remember ARM is not a company trying to force anyone to learn assembly, either assembly language programming or microarchitecture design. In the opposite way, we are and will always be so committed to make developers' lives easier. So, and I personally believe that the global open source community is our best possible friend to make it happen together. Thank you.
Thank you, Nathan. So we have all these experts here, so if you have someone from the audience who would like to ask a question, this is a perfect opportunity. Otherwise, again, thank you so much for supporting Gosim, the conference today. It's been a fantastic day, and we have had a great audience. So thank you so much, and I hope you can join us tonight as well. Some of you, otherwise I understand. So, yeah, thank you.
Thank you.